Welcome to Changing Higher Ed, a podcast dedicated to helping higher education leaders improve their institutions. With your host, Dr. Drumm McNaughton, CEO of The Change Leader, a consultancy that helps higher ed leaders holistically transform their institutions. Learn more at changinghighered.com. And now, here's your host, Drumm McNaughton.
Thank you, David. Today we celebrate our 250th episode in over 6 years of Changing Higher Ed. It's been a wonderful ride, and I'm pleased to have a special guest for this episode, Alex Hernandez, president of Champlain College in Vermont. Alex is one of the good guys who believes in and has led the path in transforming his institution. But before I get to introducing Alex, I want to give a shout out to the people who have made these 250 episodes possible. First, the many guests we've had in the 6+ years of Changing Higher Ed. I truly have been blessed with having made the acquaintance of so many luminaries and experts in our profession. And I want to say a special thank you to all of you for sharing your thoughts, your insights, and most importantly, yourself on the program. Second, a strong shout out to my team who makes all this possible. Tamara Taylor of Show Up Strong, who takes care of the website, writing, and SEO, and David White of David White Voice, my sound engineer, who makes me, my guests don't need it, but he makes me sound a heck of a lot smarter than I am. Without you both, I wouldn't be able to bring Changing Higher Ed to all we touch. Thank you. Lastly, and most importantly, I want to say thank you to you, my listeners. In the past 6+ years, we've had over 81,000 downloads of the program, including up to over 8,500 dailies. These are amazing numbers, and it's all because of your loyalty and interest that we've kept going. Thank you. And now to the podcast. Alex Hernandez, president of Champlain College. Champlain is a private independent college in Burlington, Vermont, renowned for its innovative approach to getting students ready for work, ready for life, and ready to make a difference. Alex and Champlain are doing some amazing things, but what really stood out to me is how Champlain does its strategic planning, how it is aligned with the needs of Vermont, its leading industries, and its local economies. Champlain has found the key to making planning and plans relevant and meaningful. And Alex joins me today to talk about the secret sauce that they use that helps establish meaningful programs in cyber, dual enrollment, and other relevant areas, and how the planning and resulting implementation has enabled 80% of its graduates to be employed in jobs related to their field of study. Alex, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to a conversation. You folks at Champlain are doing some amazing stuff with planning, with aligning your planning to the people in Vermont and really innovating in many, many ways. Really excited to hear about that. But before we get to it, give the listeners a little bit of your background so they can understand how you came to be the innovator you are.
Thank you. So my journey really starts with my dad. He was a farm worker, a manual laborer. My first job was with a big bank in New York City. And for us, education was what allowed that jump for our family, that opportunity. It changed my life. It changed my kids' life. And so I've worked in education for most of my career, and it's always been about how do we help students make that leap from where they are into opportunity. I've spent most of my time in the K-12 world working with really innovative schools across the country and made the move into higher ed at the University of Virginia and was introduced to a college called Champlain College. And Champlain was one of the most innovative colleges around. They were the first 4-year college in the country to offer game majors. They were one of the first undergraduate cybersecurity programs in the country and was a school that really just reinvented itself every 25 years based on what the world needed, based on what Vermont needed. I was just so captivated by the mission, and it was so resonant with my personal background that I was just feel very fortunate to be able to join there.
Well, that is an amazing background, especially for Champlain. I want to dig down a little more into your background, if you don't
Sure.
mind. You said you're first generation college graduate, correct?
My father's a first
Your
generation college
father.
graduate. Yes.
Okay. So did you learn the skills that you needed to learn in high school that got you ready for college?
I did not. At my high school, we had 900 freshmen and we had 450 sophomores. So between the freshman and sophomore year, half of us disappeared. And these aren't nameless, faceless or statistics. These are people that we know and love and grew up with in our community. And out of that 900, we graduated about 330, and only about 75 of us went to a 4-year college right after that. And so going to college, you beat the odds, was meant beating the odds. And when I got there, I remember a professor, is really one of my first classes, an English professor asked us about a book that we had read and asked, "What do you think about the author's argument?" And I thought, well, it's in writing. The author said it. Who am I to question it? And I just had not been prepared to think critically, to think about an author's argument. And that was my introduction to college. And so I went from being very, very behind in college in a lot of different ways to really just figuring out, how do I have that intellectual growth? How do I build these skills that I was going to need, not just to succeed in college, but to succeed when I got out in the workforce?
Amazing. Simply amazing. Did the college provide you the opportunities to do it? Was it something that you had to grow and do on your own, or was it a combination thereof?
It really was a combination. What I'm really grateful for my college is they taught me how to write and communicate in writing. It wasn't all just my college, it was a classmate of mine. I was a junior in college, and we were in this major where every week we would write a 10-page paper and we would exchange it with another student. And the very first or second week of that program, I exchanged a paper with a student, and he looks at me with pity in his eyes and he says, "You know, you don't know how to write, right?" And no teacher had really told me that up to that point. And that was just really the motivation I needed. And I went from probably being one of the lowest writers in that program to one of the best writers in that program by the end of the year and a half. So part of it was an incredible support in the college I was at, but part of it was just making the most of opportunities that, happened to come my way. But when I got out into the workforce, I said my first job was with a bank. They actually didn't care about any of that. What they really cared about was I knew how to use Excel. And it was
Okay.
important that I knew how to use Excel without a mouse, because if you used a computer mouse, which we used to have at the time, it made you too slow. You couldn't work fast enough to be productive for them. And so learning how to use Excel without a mouse and actually knowing some accounting was the key to being really successful. And so it was just really interesting that there's these first couple skills that allowed me to succeed at this global corporation, but you didn't really learn. My school taught me accounting, but they didn't teach me how to use those softwares that I needed.
And that is that I'm sorry, I'm gonna repeat myself. That is amazing to hear, because Champlain is about career focused education. And you just told me that you didn't really get that going through for your undergrad degree. We won't talk about where you went, but things have changed just a little bit since you and I were at undergrad, I think.
Yeah, I went to an extraordinary school and they did so much to help me kind of through life. But I think higher education at the time, we'd say, we want to teach you how to think. We'll prepare you for your third job. But those specific skills that you need to really get that foot in the door, that really wasn't viewed as the role of the institution. And maybe you got lucky. Maybe you had a classmate who would teach you, or maybe you had a faculty member who had a particular insight, but it wasn't by design. And that's what captivated me about Champlain College is Champlain is different by design. So you're not counting on those moments to happen by accident. We're trying to run programs that allow you to hit the ground running.
You bring up a really interesting point, because the traditional way of thinking about education is the undergrad teaches you how to think, the master's teaches you specific skills, and the PhD, you're bringing knowledge into being through research, whatnot. What you're telling me now, interpolating just a little bit, what is this moderator's prerogative here?
Right.
What you're telling me is it isn't just good enough for somebody to learn how to think critically, those key skills that you would learn in a GE. You also need to be able to learn workforce skills as well.
That's absolutely right. It's a combination. The workforce skills and the technical skills, they allow you to hit the ground running and get your foot in the door. we also know that there's a half-life to them. The most important skill right now isn't using Excel without a mouse. It's probably using AI in the workplace. And so finding ways to combine the skills that students need to launch themselves, to be ready, with the long-term human skills that really drive success over time. I think that's the magic that every higher education institution is trying to capture. And those are really challenging. It sounds easy, but we often don't value those technical skills that allow you to hit the ground running. And sometimes we don't capture all the human skills that you need. Like, we're great on critical thinking and analysis, but we may not be as strong on collaboration and working in groups and teamwork and problem solving in terms of like real human messy things. And I think that if in totality, those are the types of things we need to bring together for students so they can be ready.
It sounds like you've read the AAC&U reports on what workforce wants.
I haven't read that report. I just listen. I just watch my students be successful, and I listen to a lot of employers, and these are the conversations that we have.
Well, it's amazing because you essentially quoted all the things the
Great.
AAC&U report says. They do this every year, every 2 years, and it's always about teamwork,
Yeah,
working in teams, collaboration, critical thinking, problem analysis and solutions, these type of things. You just quoted all those. Those are the skills that employers need. But there's another caveat with that as well. And you touched on that, is giving the students the skills to be successful in both their initial job, but more importantly in life.
absolutely. Absolutely. And I really believe the things that drive success, both short term and long term, sometimes they're the same, but a lot of times they're different. And finding a way to put together a education that's comprehensive, that addresses those different things, that's the fun part. That's where all the innovation opportunity comes from.
And it should be. And there's a good reason why there are general education courses to teach people how to write, to teach people those critical thinking skills. Let's talk a little bit more about Champlain because to me it's fascinating. We talked about partnering with communities in the workforce and an upside down curriculum.
Yeah.
Tell our listeners a little more about this, please.
So the first distinguishing feature of Champlain, I think, is what we call our upside down curriculum. And very simply, what that means is as a new student, a new undergraduate student, you immediately start taking classes in a career focused major the minute you step onto campus. And that's different because typically you may not start classes your major until your second year and often your third year. And for students, it's almost like they have to defer their passion, they have to defer their dreams in 3 semesters, 4 semesters until they get to do what they came to college to do. And what we find for students who go through our upside down curriculum is, first of all, take things they're interested in right away, but they're also able to get a really meaningful internship that first summer. And as we know, internships completely change the game. At Champlain College, a student who has a paid internship over the course of 4 years makes $15,000 more at graduation than students without an internship. And
Wow.
students often don't get meaningful internships till summer of their junior year, if they get one at all. On my second day at Champlain College, I went to a employer partner and they had hired 8 interns. And the intern that I met, this is a cybersecurity company, and the intern that I met, she just finished her freshman year. And she had an internship, this junior type experience. And I asked her, I said, how's it going? And she goes, I don't know. It's my second day. I said, well, it's my second day too as president. We'll be in good company together. And she looks at me and she just goes, I can't believe I have this internship. She knew how lucky she was to have this opportunity. And it was our upside down curriculum that really facilitated that. And over the course of 4 years, you can have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 career experiences. So there's no magic fairy dust in terms of what we do to prepare students. We just know if we consistently put them in positions to get experiences both in the classroom, but the experiences outside the classroom are just as important, that they can just be prepared in a different way.
And this is really in line with a new book that just came out called Hacking College
Yes.
by Scott Carlson and Ned Laff. And they're talking about getting students into their major very early on, because not only is it important to find out what they like, it's equally, if not more important, to find out what they don't like.
That's right. Absolutely. So Scott and Ned came to Champlain College just a few weeks ago in January to learn what we were doing at
Ah,
Champlain because it was so in line with where they see the future of higher education. And they met one of our students, Michael Kirkpatrick. And Michael Kirkpatrick came to Champlain College to study game programming. We have this great set of game majors, but he also had this interest in sustainability. And he got this internship offer in Thailand from a aquaculture company. It was a catfish farm. And Michael said, "Why are you calling me? I'm a game programming major. What does a catfish farm want?" And it turned out the catfish farm wanted to create a digital simulation of their farm to figure out how to optimize their business. And what do game majors do? They create digital worlds. And so it's just this great example of if you get in your interest early, if you have opportunities to combine it, so combining game programming with sustainability, all of a sudden this whole new set of jobs that Scott and Ed call it the hidden job market open up to you. And they think over half the jobs out there are kind of these hidden jobs. And so there's so many reasons why the upside down curriculum matters. There's so many reasons why being able to connect your interests matter. And we think this is really where the future of higher education is going.
I think you're absolutely right. The curriculum has to be career focused. It has to be more flexible to allow moving in and out of it and getting majors courses early on, and then experiential and collaborative.
That's right.
I think it's fabulous that you've been able to do this. I want to jump into a little bit of the culture there at Champlain because it's very, very unique. You're far more agile than many other institutions. Why is that? What do you attribute that to?
I think this college has just created muscle over time to create new things, and it's got pride and it's got history around it. A change is inconvenient and it can be scary. But as an example, Champlain College was one of the first colleges to do online and distance education back in the early 90s.
Mhm.
Were one of the first ones to think about having a library that was centered around digital resources, not just physical resources. As I mentioned, we're the first four-year college to offer game majors. Now we do 7 of them. It's one of our largest programs at the college.
Wow.
Thanks to Senator Patrick Leahy, who was the longest serving senator and got a national security briefing every day. He helped us realize early on how big cybersecurity was going to be. We now have over 600 cybersecurity students. So there's just been time after time, every few years. This is a college that knows it's done something for the first time. And when the world changes, as we see it change now, we kind of have that muscle and the appetite and the hunger to move forward into the direction that the world's heading and help students get help be the college that students are going to need going forward and not just what they needed in the past.
And I think that's particularly important, especially with all the changes that we're having. And the typical higher ed mentality is to resist change, that ivory tower syndrome. I think you said it exactly right. You have built a muscle that innovates. I think that's an important statement.
It is a muscle, and it's also really trusting the innovative capacity of your institution. So I'll just give you an example. Over the last year, we've been really rethinking what it means to transform our curriculum to be more experiential, more agile, to support more of the Michael Kirkpatricks of the world who are trying to combine their different interests together. Last spring and summer, our faculty really came together and came up with 3 different visions of the college. And we brought those things together to really drive some of the innovations forward that we're looking at in the future. And that takes a leap of faith to trust that muscle, to trust the community, to trust the creativity, to unearth those ideas. But that's kind of how Champlain works. And we don't just stare at the ceiling and come up with ideas. Once we come up with them, we go out and build them. And that's what we're doing right now.
Mhm. So, has it been 25 years since the last time you reinvented?
More or less, yeah. We were started as a business college in the 1800s. with business technical skills. And after World War II, we went down to 25 students. Then we became a junior college. Then we became a residential college. And then the early 90s, we became a four-year college. And so the Champlain College we know today is really around 25 years old. And it's not like we have a schedule and we just know, hey, it's been 25 years, things it's time to think differently. But
Tick, 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 tick,
yeah,
tick, tick, tick.
but we're really entering a period post-pandemic where there's a lot of different forces in higher education. We're looking at AI, which is as ubiquitous as electricity and really changing what it means to have an entry-level job. And there's just all these things that we need to consider. And it's just time to rethink how we're approaching our education. And we think the core of what we're doing, the career focus, the combining with the human skills, helping students be ready, like, oh, those are all the right values. It's just, what does it have to look like going forward?
And I would also toss out there that about every 25 years, you have a new generation coming into the college as a student.
That's right.
And so each of those generations does things a little bit differently. And we're seeing, I guess it's Gen A now or Gen Z. I don't know. I've lost track, alphabet soup as it is. We've seen a new generation coming in who have new ideas, new thoughts. I think this is also a critical piece.
It really is a critical piece. I mean, this generation has only known mobile devices and social media and AI, and they've known two presidents that are very different than the presidents I grew up with. I mean, there's so many things that they know differently and see the world differently, and the pace is only picking up for them and for the students who are following them. And COVID really impacted how students grew up over the last few years. And so there's just all these things that our students are bringing with them, and they are hopeful about the world and they want to succeed and they want the best for themselves and the best for their families. And so there's so much that's changing. There's so much of our hopes and dreams and aspirations that are still the same and look different. How do we create these institutions that are designed to lead them to where they want to go?
And part and parcel of that is the planning aspect that goes around this. Many institutions, I believe this, I've seen it. If it wasn't for accreditors, they wouldn't have a strategic plan. They would just kind of jump from thing to thing. You're very deliberate at Champlain about your planning, but it's not a static plan. It's adjusted every year and it's a top-down, bottom-up approach.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, the North Star for Champlain College is we want our students to be ready. We want them to be ready for work, ready for life, ready to make a difference. I'm going to tell you why this is important. If you look at college graduates nationwide, these are graduates. These are the ones who succeeded. About half of them take jobs that do not require a college degree.
Mm-hmm.
And so students go to college. They want to have a great 4 years, which is amazing. They should have a great 4 years. They want to get a transformative education. And there needs to be something on the other end of that to help them thrive when they get out and to help them with the investment that they made in their education. That deal has not panned out for a lot of students. And so we think having institutions that are committed to helping students hit the ground running at Champlain, about 90% of our students have a successful career outcome within 6 months of graduation. But more importantly, over 80% of our graduates take jobs related to their field of study. So not only are they just getting any job, but they're getting jobs related to something that they studied, an area that they're interested in. And I think as a industry, as a sector, we need to really figure out ways to help students with those outcomes.
You hit on a really important thing. We talked about it a couple of weeks ago when we chatted before. The external forces driving change. We have seen so much change in technology. I mean, in the last couple of years, AI coming out. You've already talked about that and bringing on AI, games, et cetera. Reminds me of a quote that Jack Welch said years ago, the old CEO of GE, or Neutron Jack, as many people knew him as back then.
Jack was very prominent in my business education.
Oh, yes. He said, if the rate of change outside the institution is greater than the rate inside, you're heading for the cliff.
Yeah.
And I think that is a mistake that many higher ed institutions make, is they want to stay, and it's like, we have the best curriculum. We don't need to change it. We don't need to get external input into the curriculum. I think that's wrong. I think because things are changing so quickly, research is incredibly important, but I think equally, if not more important, especially for a teaching college such as yours, is getting the input from the outside of what's really going on and what students need to be successful when they graduate.
No, that's absolutely right. I mean, there's basic principles and skills that are timeless, but if we taught cybersecurity the same way 10 years ago that we did today, our students who now are employed at a rate of 94%, they wouldn't be getting any jobs. For our students in game, they build games. If we were building with tools from 10 years ago for games 10 years ago, like they would not be successful out in the world. And so it's really helpful to work with industry partners to keep us current and then really pay attention to changes. So AI has been really interesting. I didn't know quite what to do, honestly, with AI at the beginning because it was changing so fast. It's like, how do you even program against it? I mean, things were changing every 30, 60, 90 days. So we kind of let it play out a little bit. And then, in the last few months, it's just become really clear, there's going to be some AI agents that have the opportunity to essentially function as employees in the enterprise. And, that's not unreasonable to believe that'll happen the next 18 to 24 months. And so, right now we're thinking really deeply about how are entry-level jobs changing? How do we need to prepare students for a world of work where AI agents are ubiquitous? And you can either look at that as a scary thing or something to embrace. I want artificial intelligence to be scared of our students, not the other way around. And so that's how we're approaching the education and how to think about preparing them.
And that is so important to do because if they understand, they don't necessarily have to build the tools, but they need to understand how to use them. A good example of that is how college enrollment is or should be changing. You've got an enrollment funnel. Does a person need to do everything at the top of that funnel? No. It's really a waste of talent. Get them working one on one with the students when they get to that point to be able to make sure that your conversion rate is higher, that you're accepting more qualified students, and once they get in the door, that they're getting the advising that they need rather than just cookie cutter approaches.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's true in enrollment. I mean, we see it in a lot of other sectors. Students can be a co-pilot to AI. They can help prototype things with AI and figure out how to optimize it. There's things that just AI is not going to be good at that our students are going to be good at. So it's just really figuring out how do we prepare students differently in this world? And it's not the first time we've had technological change. And each time it's opened up opportunities for new types of roles, for new types of responsibilities. And you're right, we can't just sit back and cover and hope everything works out for the best. We really need to engage and embrace the world. And so that's what's really fun about Champlain. We wouldn't work as an institution if we were an ivory tower. We only work because we open our arms and we embrace our community partners, our employer partners, because that's the only way we can learn and make sure our students get the experiences that they need in order to be successful. And they need those internships. They need those class projects. We need those guest speakers in the class. And that's the magic that happens when you allow those relationships to go back and forth. And so we're really building up our capacity right now to really build more and more of these employer partnerships.
A question on culture. I'm going to double back just a
Sure.
little bit because building that innovation muscle that we talked about a little before, you also have to hire people who are innovators as well, do you not?
You do. You do. And you often have people who are really innovative already inside that you may not know about. You have other people who built something before and are just waiting for an opportunity to build something again. And so I find that once the institution aligns of here are some opportunities to build great things, people raise their hands and you bring in people who come and are fascinated by your ideas. And it's just a mix of these things. And I think that's what's fun about continuing to evolve and continue to grow organizations.
How do you balance the innovation with the faculty? Because you have a strong shared governance
Yeah.
process there at Champlain. You get a new idea. How does it work with faculty? Because faculty generally are resistant to new ideas. Or are yours different because you hire differently?
Yeah, I can't speak to every college. I know with our faculty, we've got a really collaborative relationship. And I think, some of the tensions are innovation happens on top of just doing really good work with students every day. You can't stop the job of teaching and serving students. And so it's a lot. So figuring out when you can raise your hand and how much capacity you have and when do you move things forward, that's a lot of figuring out how to create the space for innovation because you can't stop serving students during that time. We're pretty broadly inclusive. We engaged 70 faculty last spring and a bunch over the summer. And all the ideas we have right now kind of come from our faculty, and we're just working together in different ways, differs on the semester to move things forward. But it's lots of collaboration, communication, working through hard things. It's not easy or without concern or tough times. I mean, there's certainly tough days where we're like, what are we doing? But I think if the vision is clear of what we're trying to accomplish, we're trying to get students ready. We want to be more flexible. We want to be more experiential. And we've got these ideas that we think are really good ideas that we can bring to life for students. You kind of push through those hard times. And then there's some really fun times too, like when Ned and Scott were here for the Hacking Education and they took a big step back at what we were working on. You lose perspective, like, is this really the right thing or what are we doing? And they're like, wow, this is really amazing. And so it's moments like that that really keep you going.
And I remember them talking about, they didn't name the college, but I remember them talking about the young man
Yeah.
who was the simulation games, et cetera. That's a great story. And I had them on a podcast about 4 weeks ago. It was a great conversation.
Yeah. I mean, what keeps me going is when you see the students who are living what it is that you're doing and you're like, okay, we know this is the right thing. How do we do more of it? That's an easy motivator for innovation. We were looking at a program, a course around sustainable food systems. And we had two faculty members come together to design it. It was the coolest course I've ever seen. I was literally ready to enroll in the class after I read the proposal that they put around it. And so it's just those moments. Or the other day, I was walking by some faculty members who are working on the design, and everyone was just sitting around like, "Whoa, that's a really cool set of courses." And so, like, those are the moments where like you're on the right track. Just keep pushing, keep doing, and you can never stray too far from what students are telling you.
Well, Alex, this has been fascinating. I hear the passion in your voice as we're talking, and it's so nice to hear that and see it in your face as well.
Thank you.
3 takeaways for your fellow presidents about innovation and making graduates job ready.
I think the first thing is just have a really clear North Star. So we talk about being ready. We have a couple other goals that really help anchor us. So uh, we have a really special relationship with Vermont, and Vermont right now has about 17,000 people exiting the workforce every year, and only about 5,000 high school graduates, and that number is shrinking.
Wow.
And so Vermont is not going to thrive or grow unless we have more talented people choose to live here in the state. And Champlain College is a net importer of skilled talent into Vermont. So we have a goal to prepare 1,000 graduates every year to work in Vermont's leading industries. We call it building on Vermont's strengths. And when we think about that goal and how it works, we build workforce pipelines and pathways for students that has academic programs, that has job internships, that has employer partnerships, that has dual enrollment programs. All of a sudden, that creates a lot of direction and energy for a college. So in cybersecurity, for instance, we just launched a dual enrollment program called Vermont CyberStart. We've got some great academic majors, and we've got the Leahy Center for Cybersecurity, which organizations like the Secret Service, they'll hire our students while they're in college, on our college, to do real work in digital investigations. And so we just have this tremendous pathway in cybersecurity. Once we see that, we can say, oh, now we can do this for other industries. And when we hear from enough folks, hey, we want this around data analytics, or we want this around digital marketing, it just really creates direction. And so I use that as an example because it's not like we stare up at the ceiling and just make up ideas and decide to do some of them and not. It's when you really engage your community, you really talk to employers, you really talk to students, all of a sudden, how to harness that energy in a way that's a win, not just for the students and for the college, but for the community and the state, that becomes apparent. And that kind of provides our direction and pathway around innovation.
So taking input from the outside is critical for innovation. What other things?
I think the second thing is choosing what you're not going to do and saying no. We are a small college. We don't have thousands of people. There's only so many things we can do. And so really prioritizing the things that are going to matter most. And that's really hard. Like I'm guilty, just like I'm sure a lot of people are, of having too many ideas and wanting to go to too many different directions. But I find the hallmark of really successful organizations is just having the discipline to say no to things and being able to do the things you choose to do really, really well.
Mm-hmm. And your third?
My third is, I just think building a culture of trust. There's a saying that you can only move at the speed of trust. And I think it's easy to say innovation, you have to be willing to break things, sure, but you don't need to go out and break people. You can build people up while you're breaking prototypes and putting things out quickly. And I just know that we're never going to get to where we want to get to if it's just me giving speeches or it's just a few people innovating in the corners of the college. You need to be able to harness the entire energy of the institution. And I think finding ways to get that alignment is really, really important. And not all institutions are organized to do that. There's a lot of institutions, they're a collection of small departments. And it's really hard to think institutionally and bring those things together. And so I think a lot about how do you build momentum and energy across broad groups of people, not just little pockets.
I thought those are great things. I'm going to toss in one more. Just remember, you're not always the smartest person in the room.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm also not, I don't need them to be my ideas. I find in education, shamelessly stealing other people's good ideas is a great way to do right by students.
Yeah. The difference between plagiarism and academic writing is citations.
I think it's important to give credit, which I do. And I think it's also important to share. It's funny. My wife, Michelle, she always comments how willing we are to share our ideas and how much it means to other people. And it's because the hard part isn't the idea. The hard part's doing it. So there's no danger or threat to any organization sharing what it is that you do. If anything, you're helping other students. Our biggest problem is we've had too much good education as a country. So the more we can do to support others, I think is really, really important. And I do think, in seriousness, the ideas that we're working on right now, my hope is they're going to be very helpful to other small colleges as they're navigating some of the same forces and headwinds that we are right now.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. I've thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. What's next for you, Alex? What's next for Champlain?
We're just laser focused on this evolution that we're on right now. And as you know, back in 2008, when the financial crisis hit, people didn't really have babies. And all of a sudden, we're hitting this point where there's going to be less, college freshmen than, there ever has been. And we know that students are thinking about online education in a different way. So there's all these forces that are changing things. And we've got this great opportunity. We've got an amazing online division that serves 1,800 students across the country. We have this on campus. And so we're thinking about, how do we transform ourselves so we're even more experiential, more agile? How do we bring together the online and the on campus in some really compelling ways? How do we build these workforce pipelines for Vermont? So we've got plenty to keep us joyfully occupied for the next few years. And I'm having the time of my life, working with our community to help advance them.
Well, thank you so much. This has been one of my favorite podcasts.
Well, that's very kind of you.
You give such great energy to it. I wish you guys up at Champlain all the best.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening today, and a special thank you to my guest, Alex Hernandez, president of Champlain College. Alex, thanks for a wonderful conversation. I was intrigued and you didn't disappoint at all, telling us how your strategic planning works. And I look forward to hearing from others who may use the same type of planning. Listeners, thanks again for listening. I look forward to hearing from you next time.
Changing Higher Ed is a production of The Change Leader, a consultancy committed to transforming higher ed institutions. Find more information about this topic, along with show notes on this episode at changinghighered.com. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe to the show, and we would also value your honest rating and review. Email any questions, comments, or recommendations for topics or guests to podcast@changinghighered.com. Changing Higher Ed is produced and hosted by Dr. Drumm McNaughton, post-production by David L. White.